right now and graciously carved out this period. All right, folks, welcome back to House Government Operations Military Affairs, Friday morning, January 31st. We are picking up some conversation on the Bennington election process that we're guiding. We're joined today by Jim Condos. He's the former Secretary of State and has done work for quite a long time in and around elections, not just in that role and other roles. And very similar to the purpose of bringing in the former Deputy Secretary of State yesterday, Paul Gillis, some of the committee members here requested testimony from the former secretary on his perspective as we start to refine our committee decision with how to handle this. So I think the first request from the committee was actually from Representative Pisnall, and then others thought it was a valuable perspective to bring in. So thank you for joining us. And with that, the thing that we're looking at right now is how, if there were to be more ballots put out or had a special election as opposed to a target election as to a full district, we're really struggling with the sort of the dynamics of that, toiling, so to say. And we were, and then the historic precedent is to retain the member who was certified and then, establish a path with policy, a bill later, our elections bill, as to how to identify how this problem occurred, how to rectify and solve. So I guess that's kind of where we're at with our heads right now. And I guess I just wanted to open it up to you, sir, just for your perspective on some of those moving parts.
All right, thank you, Chairman. And just to clarify as an introduction, my name is, for the record, my name is Jim Condos. I am the former Secretary of State, having served 12 years here in Vermont as the Chief Elections Officer. I also, as many of you know, served in the Vermont Senate for 8 years prior to that. This is kind of unprecedented. We had never seen. I know that I was contacted both by the current secretary, who's doing a great job, and by Chairman Byron to weigh in on this. And essentially, we never had this happen while I was secretary. That's not a condemnation of anybody. It's just the way the system works. But first, let me just say that the redistricting process is one that should never be rushed. There are many checks and balances, and those checks and balances include the software. It includes Ledge Council's review. It includes legislative review. It includes the SOS office, specifically the elections office, and then finally the town clerks. So there's many checks and balances throughout the system. I think that the hard part sometimes is going from a map description to a word description, and that sometimes is where you run into some issues. It's really about interpretation. But in this particular instance, at least the way I understand it, is that we've now gone through two separate election cycles that have used this particular situation. The House has already seated the winner, the supposed winner or the certified winner. And frankly, I understand that this did go before a judge, that the judge said he had no authority to rule on it. The Secretary of State rightfully also said that she has no way to rule on it, that it really comes down to legislative approval or legislative action, since the legislature ultimately is the reviewer of qualifications and the actual seating of its members. So it just, I guess the House has already seated the supposed winner, the certified winner. And my thought would be that the House should allow that person to maintain the office through this election cycle, and then to correct the system so that the district maps are correct. And I understand the map is correct, but that there was an interpretation that was missed in the wording. Correct it, make it clear, and then move forward for the 26th general election. That's what I would suggest that the committee move forward with. And as far as it calling a new election, so I liken this would be to a budget revote. If there was a budget, like a school budget goes down and there's a revote, you don't limit it to just those people who voted the first time. You open it up to everybody in the district. And I think the same thing goes with a petition vote. You open it up to everybody within the district. And I would submit to you that I believe that that's the case here, that if you're going to go forward, I forget, I didn't look up to see how many towns are involved, but I understand there's 4 or 5 towns. In my view, that all voters within that district should be allowed to vote if there is a revote. In other words, it should not be a targeted vote of just those people who were in the wrong district. It should not be a targeted vote of just the one town. It should be open to all members of the district to vote, if that's the choice that the legislature makes. That's not what I'm suggesting, but that's basically it, I think. And I will stop there and then take any questions.
No, thank you very much. And that really kind of mirrored what we heard from Paul Gillies yesterday. So yeah, seeing some continuity to the perspective there. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Not seeing any.
Okay.
We really appreciate your perspective.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to zoom in. I know you
Yeah,
can see.
well,
Oh, we
well,
do have one question.
Yes.
Rep. Nugent.
Oh. Do you see the, like a budget vote as a perfect similarity with the situation?
Well, there's no perfect situation or no perfect similarity, but I think when you have a budget vote that goes down or a petitioned revote, it's open to all voters, not just those that voted, or not just those in a particular neighborhood or something. It's all voters within the district, and I would submit to you that I think that from that standpoint, it would be viable to do it the same way as to open it up. So if you're going to do this, I think all voting members from the district, which would include 4 or 5 towns, should be allowed to vote.
No. Any other questions for?
Nope.
Well, sir, I really appreciate you carving out the time. I'm glad this was a brisk conversation for the sake of you attending your conference. So I hope all is well down there, and you're enjoying what you're doing.
Well, I'm here at the National Association of Secretaries of State, and seeing a lot of my former colleagues, and having a lot of election discussions. But yes, it's also been a trying time down here in DC because of the tragedy that was suffered just off of Reagan National Airport. Fortunately, I flew in about 4 hours before that, but it's a little distracting, and certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people who have lost their lives and their families.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we're definitely sending prayers, love, and light to all of you down there while you're experiencing the emotions of that environment. So noted. Well, With that, I guess we're good with you, so feel free to log out. And thank you very much. We have the National Guard folks coming on one after this piece of the morning. Did anybody want to have any discussions based on the testimony of the past 3 days before we shift to the National Guard? Which Hooper was first? Representative Hooper of Burlington.
We're ready to wrap this up. I'm ready to make a motion.
We're not quite ready.
I think that's hasty, but I agree, no more perspectives, like we don't need, we know what we gotta do and we gotta decide, you know?
Yep. No, I'm there. His presence was a request, so I wanted to bring him in for that. But I hear what you're saying, sir.
And we do have to warn when we're going to take action.
And
So,
I
on our
did,
agenda.
we had discussed Tuesday, bringing in our current Secretary of State one more.
Oh, all right, that's.
But she is also
So
at
you gotta
the
let her-
conference that he is at. So we need her to address some issues that she's already stated. So we really do need to hear from her again
So
to
we
clarify.
roughly for the agenda next week, Tuesday afternoon, I guess this will be what our first formal committee testimony in our meeting will be. Was at the very least bringing in our current Secretary of State and more than likely the elections director for one more conversation with them.
One last bite.
So when do you think it will be voting? On Wednesday?
That is a decision for us to make as a committee, but I would like to have
I
it.
just want to make sure I'm on Zoom.
You check the agenda and it'll be warned
Yeah.
the day before.
We also have to get the path that we decide. The language, I don't want to put, even though I think it will be not a lot of words. I want to give everybody ample time with digesting it. This is a massive decision. So I want to make sure everybody is at the maximum level of comfort as quickly as possible. So I don't want to drop language on you either and say, hey, voting in 20 minutes. I don't think that's the way. So,
Well, is there anything that the Secretary of State would add that would change any of our thinkings right now?
Well, I'm gonna just interject this, that she originally came out with a statement of what she thought we should do. And I personally would like to question her on the record about her statement. Of proposed action. Because I believe she's changed her mind or something, so I need to know that before we put language on paper.
A record of that statement.
Do we have a record?
we have record of it through, it was either through, it was an email, I believe, that turned into, it made it to the media. It was very, very early in the discovery of
Yes.
this. And it either came through the Secretary of State's email or the elections director. I don't recall. But if it was the elections director, I believe he cited her, but I do not have that directly in front of me. That's why I'd like to just have the two of them in to have that conversation with us. As, we just had a deputy secretary of state, a former secretary of state. I kind of feel like we should have
In all fairness.
current one before we get to that, to this point, right? So if we're all comfortable with that as the path, we'll get that agenda laid out for next week when we meet later this afternoon. And I guess right now, until our friends from the National Guard show up, why don't we just take a short break? Will?
10:45 for them.